What's going on, guys? All right, for today's video, on the dyno, we got a 5th gen Camaro, and I'm gonna walk you through a little bit of the tuning process on this one. So I got it warming up right now, letting it idle, getting the oil up and cooling up the temperature. So this car we did a couple years ago, and I might have a video on my channel of this car. So 5th gen 1LE LS3. We had previously done a Roto-Fab, long tube headers, to the stock exhaust, stock catback, thermostat, and obviously a dyno tune. So that was what we did previously. This round we added a camshaft. So we did our stage 1 camshaft package to it, and so we did a stage 1 cam, push rods, springs, trunnion upgrade, and we're gonna do a little tune-up on it right now. So I've done a lot of these stage 1 cams, and so I already kind of know where I need to start as far as a tune. So I already got it idling. I already got the virtual VE pretty much dialed in. I kind of have a base virtual VE set up for these stage 1 cams. You know, basically this basic kind of cam only deal. So wideband's in it, it's warmed up, car's just about up to temperature, and I got my base tune in it. So let's do a couple pulls on it, and I'm just gonna kind of run through this, kind of stopping the camera minimally to make tuning changes and stuff, but kind of show you what goes on. So I'm gonna hit these fans, so I'll try to talk over these. Again, I like, if you can see from my other videos, I like fans. I like a lot of air blowing across stuff, try to kind of simulate. All right, so I'm gonna check the straps, because I did roll this car out. Kind of hear that cam chopping. Again, that's our stage 1 cam, our stage 1 LS3 cam. Very, very drivable. It'll drive down to 1700, you know, in 6 gear if you're kind of lugging it along. Still got a good sound. Got a really, really good torque band. We'll compare that to the baseline from the bolt-ons from before. So dyno breaks off. I'm just kind of roll this thing again as I'm dynoing these things, and when I'm strapping them down, I'll kind of center them, I'll roll them out, and then make sure the straps stay tight, because sometimes you don't get it on the dyno quite centered, and once you roll it forward, it'll kind of center itself. And then I always chock the front wheels, wheel chocks, just for an added safety measure. Just kind of take you through some of the details. I'll try to be quick and not draw this out, but back over here. So I already got my dyno software all set up for this particular car, so the files load into his previous file. So you can see I got my data logger going. So we can already see just to start here at idle. Again, this is just a base tune I threw in it. I got a little bit of fuel trim adding. So down in these lower mass airflow. So this is going to be all mass airflow tuning again. I'll do some final tweaks to the volume efficiency table on the street, but on the dyno here, I'm going to do MAF only tuning, just to kind of simplify this. Since I still use the MAF as the primary airflow component for measuring airflow coming into the engine. So, but that's really close, obviously. So, traction control off. Hold that button down. On these 5th gens and 6th gens, you got to hold this button down. Both lights come on, traction's off. So the check engine light's on because I got one of the rear O2 sensors out. I'm using that for a wideband. That's where I got my wideband in, one of those. And just shut this door down. So let's roll it up here. Grab my dyno pendant. Get this thing into 4th gear. It's a 1-to-1 on our TR6060 trans that's in this car. All right, so at coolant temp, this is the next thing I'm looking at when I'm doing my pulls. We got a thermostat in this thing. These cars usually run low 180s, so I'm usually trying to simulate that somewhere 180-ish. Oil temp, I got enough oil temp in it. I'm always, usually on the dyno, I try to get the oil temperatures at least 150. You know, on the street in the summertime, you're gonna see 200. That always doesn't have as much an effect on tuning as the coolant temperature does. But since the airflow is going through the cylinder heads, and the cylinder heads are really just primarily cooled by the coolant. So I do run these cars warm though. I do not do cold pulls on any of this stuff. I'm always fully warmed up. Sometimes obviously some of the supercharged stuff you can inflate dyno numbers with cold runs. You fire a car up, just get the coolant up, just up the temperature enough, and do a pull, and the supercharger's still cold. It'll make more power that way, but that's not how the cars run on the street. But this normally aspirated combination, they actually tend to make good power when they're fully warmed up, like right at 180, 185. So I'm lucky. At this shop, we have a eddy current brake, so that's what this yellow button does. I got it set at about 25% right now, so that loads, you can kind of hear the car loaded down a little bit there. I'll use that to warm the cars up too. So I'll roll it out in the dyno, get it up to speed, hit that brake, and I can keep kind of sitting here and simulate real world road conditions, loading the car down a little bit. So I can put some load on it, get that coolant temp up. We're like at 78 right now, so I can probably do a pull right here. So what I'm gonna do is I'll usually kind of bring it up to around 2,000, kind of start loading it down, hit the brake, kind of load it down a little bit, just roll onto it, and then hit the sample button. All right, we'll just do a partial pull. I was a little bit lean on the bottom there. Hit neutral. All right, so let's see if I can zoom in there. So I got my screen kind of right where I can see it. I'm sitting in the driver's seat here. So 404, 426 torque, but you can see, obviously the power's still climbing. Torque looks like it just about peaked there, but my air fuel curve was a little funky. So we're gonna shut the car off. Zoom this back out. All right, so let's take a look at the data log. So we're gonna stop the log, kill the logger here. Make this window a little smaller so I can get to my scroll bar. All right, so we'll bring the logger right over to the dyno pull. Okay, so first thing I'm looking at here is, again, base tune. I already know about where the timing's gonna be. I set that always conservative first, and I'm always looking at air fuel. So air fuel is a little wonky. So this is the first pull. I've not done any pulls. It's just like my raw baseline tune. So you can see it's like real rich on the hit. I did kind of punch it pretty quick. When you punch it really quick, you'll get kind of some transition fuel extra. So I'm not going to worry about that right here, but I'm going to start worrying about it probably right there. So that looks pretty good, 0.86. That's a little rich. I want to be 0.87 is kind of the goal, the target for this NA setup. So you can see it went lean. I almost let off, but then I saw it go rich again. So obviously I got to add some fuel in here. So I got to add some airflow to the mass airflow curve right there. And then it actually drives rich again. So then too rich. So what we're gonna do, I'm just kind of looking at the timing. The timing looks so far pretty close. With these cam setups, I always like having, down low at low RPM, where we do lose a little bit of volumetric efficiency below 3,000 RPM, as you do with any moderately sized cam and above. These engines usually like a lot of timing, like mid-20s, even closer to 30, depending on the size of the camshaft. So that's looking pretty good there. Again, I'm not worried about timing because right now I got the timing conservative, and I can start sprinkling in timing once I get the air fuel straightened out. As long as the timing is close, usually just do the air fuel. If the timing is way off, it can affect the air fuel ratio. So if the timing is really low in relation to where the engine wants to be, it will kind of drive the air fuel ratio lean, and it can kind of screw with your readings a little bit. So when I'm tuning, again, I've done enough LS motors where I know the specific combinations. I know generally where they need to be on timing, so I'm close there. So anyway, this is kind of my area of primary concern right now, is this lean spot. That's a little fat there. I could probably take some out of there. So then I'm looking at my mass airflow curve, because again, we're doing mass airflow tuning. With a cam down low, you're gonna get a little bit of this reversion going on here. So you gotta kind of average that out. So, 6,400, 6,100. So tune, open up his file. I already had that. So I already got my base, my cam cal here. That's gonna open up. Again, I use HP tuners for all this stuff. I really like this software. I think it's the best for tuning stock GM ECUs. So mass airflow curve is under airflow tab and in the general tab, and then it's right here. So, so in that, let's see here, 6,100, when you're looking at wide bands too, there's always a little bit of a delay from where the actual reading is coming, because you're reading that reading right off the MAF. But the wideband, since I'm reading in the exhaust, there's a little bit of delay from the signal on the wideband. So I'll usually back this up, like let's say right there, you know, let's say like right there, 0.85, I want to lean that out. So I usually go back a couple hundred RPM to about right in here, and then look at my mass airflow curve, just because again, from where this mass airflow sensor is reading that signal to where that mass of air hit that mass airflow sensor and then made its way through the engine, mixed with fuel, burned it, and then the O2 sensor saw it, the wideband saw it, there's a delay. So if you start trying to chase the exact point on these data loggers between an airflow meter, especially a mass airflow sensor, and the reading at that specific RPM, you gotta kind of back it up a little bit. So if I'm making sense. So that point right there, 0.84, is actually an airflow event that probably, you know, is probably about right in here. So when I said that 60, you know, so we're looking at maybe 64. Again, the mass airflow sensor has a little bit of reversion going across it. So 61, 64, 65. Okay, so I'm gonna lean this out probably starting at about 6,000 to 66. I'm gonna take out like 2%, so 0.98. So I'll highlight, and I'm data logging the actual frequency from the MAF. And then what I'll do is I take out airflow from that frequency. So this is the actual frequency the computer's seeing, and this scale up here. And then this is the airflow you're telling it, the software is telling the ECU how much airflow is coming through the MAF, and then it takes that airflow, combines it with its known engine displacement and temperatures and all that, and comes up with a fuel amount to meet the commanded fueling that I'm asking for. Since we can adjust, this is the primary way to adjust this and the power enrichment table. So if this is way off, there's either going to be something wrong with the power enrichment table, or the injector data is wrong. This has stock injectors in it with stock injector data. So, and I know my power enrichment, I should be commanding somewhere around there. Yeah, like 0.854. I might lean that up a little bit too after I do this, but I'm going to take a couple of percent out of this first. And then we're going to go back here, and it was still a little bit fat, even out a little further. Yeah, but even that's 6.5 there. So then it starts to lean up a little bit, and in this area, like 7,000, it's looking good. That's looking good, but then right here, this is lean. So that's looking like, you know, low sevens. So I'm gonna go here, and I'm gonna go like 70, 50, and 7,200. I'm gonna add a percent. Actually, I'm gonna add 2%. And hopefully I'm not boring you with this, guys, but this is just kind of how I go through this stuff. And then it stays lean out, 74, 7,400, maybe take another, yeah, 7,350. Take 2% out of that. And then as it starts to kind of fade rich again, 7,600. So that's more like 75, 77, okay. I might take a percent out of 75 just to try to blend this. And then I'm gonna go back through the actual two-dimensional curve of this thing, and if I get any jagged spots up and down, I'll show you that too. So this is just generally too rich from the rest of the way up. So I'm just gonna take, and this is gonna make the MAF curve a little jagged, but we'll go back and kind of hand smooth it. So yeah, from probably like 7,800, I'm gonna pull 2%. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do instead of doing that? I am going to, just to get my commanded fueling, so the commanded fueling comes from the power enrichment under fuel, gas, I'm going to lean this up a little bit. So I'm gonna just go 1.16, just a smidge. I really like to try to get the power enrichment to match what the wideband is reading. So, and again, if you guys need more instructional stuff on this, there's other videos on YouTube. I'm kind of assuming that if you're watching this, you've either are gonna skip ahead just to see the power figures, or you already know what I'm talking about here and you're kind of curious to how I do it. And you can certainly skip ahead and see the final numbers towards the end of the video. That's perfectly fine. That's what's nice about YouTube. You can scroll ahead and skip all this BS if this is just BS to you. So, So then I leaned the whole curve out. So it might lean this back out. So, but we'll see how much it does. Timing again, I'm just gonna freaking run with that. So key on, I'm gonna save this. All right, I don't think I need to change anything else right now. We're gonna write vehicle. This takes 30 seconds. I'll cut the camera off and we'll start back up when we make another pull. All right guys, the car's just about warmed back up here. I'm gonna take my load off, let this stabilize. So another thing I always do, there's kind of two ways to do this on E38 PCMs and E67 PCMs. There's a calculated value called injector tip temp, and that there's a couple tables that will influence fueling. One of them being an injector offset based on injector tip temp. So when you reflash the ECU when the car's hot, this will revert, because this is calculated, this will revert to coolant temperature. And if you try to do a pull right when it's at coolant temperature, it'll make the car really, it'll show rich. It'll dump fuel because it has a bunch of offset to the injector. So I always try to get that. Either you can take that table and take like the 140-ish degree temperature, because that's usually where they kind of run in the summertime, or you just run in the dyno for a minute or two and the computer will recalculate it back down, so you can see we're at 147 or 183 on coolant temperature, 167 oil temperature. These E38s, Camaro SS's, the oil temperature is a calculated value, so there's not an actual temperature sensor. ZL1s do have a real oil temp sensor, SS's do not. So they have the sensor installed in the car, but it's not wired to the PCM. So this looks good. Slow us down a little bit, roll onto it here. Sample. We're gonna do a full pull. Just shy of 470. Curve looks good. Sorry, just looking at that curve. Let's zoom back out, shut the car off, we'll kill the logger here. And this car being a 1LE, these things do have 391s. The 1LEs always will dyno a smidge lower than like an SS with a 342 gearing. The shorter gears, higher numerically gears, will always dyno a smidge lower. So, all right, so you can see dyno log here. We're still lean on that one spot, so I do need to fatten that up. But out top, it's looking pretty good. It's a smidge rich, but this is looking really close. You're always gonna have, with the cam, you're always gonna have a little bit of waviness. It's really hard to nail it like dead nuts. The DI stuff, like 6th-gen Camaro C7 Corvettes, you can get those air fuel curves real flat, like real flat. LS stuff, port injected stuff with a cam as the intake manifold kind of like ebbs and flows with the Helmholtz resonances of a longer runner intake like these plastic intakes are, since the injectors are spraying into the port and it's kind of running in and out of that ebb and flow of the air of the pulses hitting the back of the valve. It's hard to get it dead nuts on, but you can get it really close. And these LS motors are very tolerant to 12.3, 12.4 air fuel. So I'm looking at Lambda. Sorry, that might be confusing to some of you guys, but they're real tolerant of, with a cam like this, 12.3, 12.4, all the way up to like 12.9. They'll pretty much make the same power. There's really no difference. I know you can get on the internet and read all sorts of stuff. Well, they got to be 13.0 to make max power. That's not true. I've been dynoing these things for many, many, many years, and I've tried it all different ways, and on this same dyno, and it doesn't really make much of a difference. You're talking like tenths of a horsepower to a horsepower from like 12.4 to 1 to 12.9 to 1. And so anywhere in between there is the car's at its peak. It's not going to make a difference going from 12.5 to 1 to 12.9 to 1 on an LS3 like this. So some of the LS1 stuff the earlier stuff with the less efficient combustion chambers will make a little bit more power up towards 12.9 versus like 12.5, but the rectangular port stuff, NA, it doesn't matter. It can kind of vary between those areas and it'll all be the same. So I am going to richen this up though. That's too lean. Just for safety's sake. But honestly, the top end out here is looking really good. I might try to lean that up a little bit. That little dip And this down here, yeah, okay. So timing again, yeah, timing's definitely soft. I'm gonna leave the timing alone down here. I think that's fine. But the first thing we're gonna do is get this air fuel straightened out. But honestly, we could probably kind of do both at this point because this out here looks really good, and I know I need more timing. So I'm only at 23 degrees up here at 6600. I know it'll take at least 2 more, probably 3 more degrees. So we're going to, first things we're gonna do, again, we're gonna go back to our MAF curve, and well, let's go back here. I am now commanding a 0.86 equivalence ratio, and I'm pretty much there up out top. So I think I'm just gonna leave out top here alone. That looks pretty good. Like I said, I was trying to 0.87, but we're kind of bouncing 0.86, 0.85, 0.86, 0.7, 0.6, 0.7. That looks really good. So this looks nice. This down here, we're gonna add some fuel. So probably in that upper 6,000 hertz range on the MAF curve. Go to back to my MAF curve here. And I am gonna take a look, which I didn't do earlier in the video when I was talking. Sometimes I'll look at this. And this is just the plot of the data in the MAF curve, and it kind of gives you an idea, you know, versus just looking at numbers at how this curve works. And you really want this thing to be, you know, as your frequency goes up, you want the airflow to what the computer is seeing the airflow go up, obviously. And usually the blade style MAFs that are coming in LS7, LS3, LSA, any of the Gen 4 ECU stuff, Gen 4, or say Gen 4 engines, will always tend to look like this. With good injector data. And you start getting some injectors with bad data, and you're going to end up with some weird stuff, and maybe some ramps here, or a level off or something. But when you got good data with stock injectors, this is about what you're always going to shoot for as far as a curve. It'll kind of curve up and then straighten out towards the top. And then some of the boosted stuff, you'll tend to get a little bit more of a curve out here, but that's for another video. We're in A. So because I'm kind of lean, in this area, I'm thinking, so that's like, thinking probably in these areas here, maybe it's a little lean. It used to be where HB tuners had a better labeling system on this, and now it's really hard to tell where, like if I want to shoot for like, you know, like right in here, like right at 7,000 or 6,900, I have to go and look at the actual airflow amount. It's just, they're just making it harder on us. But yeah, so that one I just toggled there. Oops, wrong button. So like that one's kind of a low spot. If we raise that up a little bit by hand, well, I'm trying to do this one-handed here. So hold the camera. And yeah, so in that kind of low point, shoot, I keep doing that. I'm gonna set the camera down here, guys. I'm gonna smooth this out, and then we'll go to the timing tables, and I'll bring that up and start the camera back up. And I'm just gonna smooth this curve out a little bit because it's lean in this area here where it kind of dips down. So I'm gonna add some in here and do it quickly. I'm gonna use 2 hands. All right, guys. So I just kind of smooth this out, pick the computer up, and so I can kind of grab the button with one hand and move it with the other. And I use this a lot, honestly. I really like this feature at HB Tuners when you're looking at curves, and I use this like the 3D modeling on the VE tables too. I'll make sure, and VE like this, you're not always you're gonna get jagged parts, but just to make sure you can look at it to make sure you don't have some like out there number versus just looking at the 2D table, which can be, you know, you start looking at these numbers, it's hard to see if there's a spike or a valley. So I got that smoothed out to kind of where I want it right now. I added some fuel down there where that lean spot was. So let's go down to timing. So spark, I'm gonna start with my high octane table. Let's expand this out all the way. Again, this table is, I know kind of where to set these for this cam and this package, because I've done so many of them. But let's add some timing to this thing. So what we're gonna do here, instead of looking, we've already done our air fuel. So spark, since the y-axis of the spark table is an air mass, I obviously log air mass. So my air mass is here, and I kind of got my logger set up to where, you know, here's my wideband and my fueling area. This is kind of my spark load area, and this is kind of like my other, you know, boost or manifold pressure, RPM, and speed. So I kind of separate my logger. This is just how I like to look at it. This is my personal preference of using HB tuners for almost 20 years, of how to set this up. So it makes, and I kind of set this up similarly on other stuff.
But this is how I do Gen 4 LS stuff. So then I'm up here looking at this. So we're looking at air mass and at what the actual timing is. So you can see there's no knock. That's my knock retard right there, my red line. There's no knock. You really got to throw a lot of timing at these 93 octane at these LS3s with a cam to get some knock. You're usually beyond MBT. Once even you're inducing knock, usually you'll hit your peak power before you're into knock. So with 93 octane, 91 octane is a different story. The pure 91 octane, no ethanol, you can get into some knock pretty easily on these things, and you usually got to dial the timing accordingly. But usually on 93, 10% ethanol, you can run this up to MBT. That's why these cars don't really gain much on E85 over 93 E10. There's just the compression's just not there. So I'm going to add timing everywhere. So I'm going to start right about in here. You can see I got enough down here. I like where I'm at down here, down in the low RPM area. That's enough. I don't think there's going to be a gain there, but as you can see, it kind of drops off quickly. My goal on this is going to be probably 24 degrees at peak torque, which if we go back to the dyno graph, peak torque's happening at like the first pull. Yeah, so you can see it's peak torque 52. So that's where I want to try to have my peak timing, or my lowest timing point as the thing's revving out. So somewhere right in here, so you can kind of see it's already naturally doing that. Again, my timing table, my base timing table, I already know where this kind of needs to be. So we're gonna start at 25 air mass, 3,500 RPM. And we're gonna just take that timing table from 3,400, 0.85, so I'm going to come across. So we're going to start adding some timing in here. So yeah, just bear with me, guys. Sorry, I know I'm kind of nerding out here about this. But again, if you guys are into this stuff, you can watch it and see how I do it. If you're not, skip ahead and see what this thing makes when I wrap the video up at the end. So I'm just going to kind of do this roughly. I'll go back through and smooth this off later. But I do want this, and I might have to set the camera down to make this quicker. So I do want this top out here to be like 27, so at 0.88. So what I might do is set the camera down. So what I'll usually do is just start adding, like, okay, so let's say at 6,800 at 0.88, we're gonna come across 6,800. I want that figure to be, let's just throw 26 at it to start. And then I'll go back through, hit my 3D, and you can see that little spike right there. I'll go back through and just smooth it, blend this all around it by hand. That's just how I do it. So I'm gonna do that right now. I'm gonna set the camera back down, do that, and then we'll look at it after I do it. All right, guys. So we're back. I got this thing smoothed out where I want it. So I kind of touched up some other areas. So I got in Facebook groups a lot, and guys will post up, which is kind of funny to me. They'll post up other tunes, and some of these timing tables you see where they're just like putting like giant blocks of like 15, 20. Like that is a huge peeve of mine, because that is, as you go through temperature changes throughout the season, and the engine runs in boosted, non-boosted, whatever, as the engine runs up and down through these air mass ranges, when it's really freaking hot out, like 100 degrees humid, this car may only go at wide open throttle. We were just looking at that dyno graph, my data log. So it's like 65 degrees in the shop right now. We're pretty kind of a nominal temperature right now. 0.96 is where I hit. Now on a really cold night, when it's 45 or 50 degrees, that could be that you could see 1 out of the air mass. On a super hot day, it'll be 0.90, 0.892. So as the air density moves up and down, and your air mass moves up and down for the same combination, the timing requirements change. As the air mass goes up, and as there's more oxygen available in the air from colder, drier air, you don't need as much timing, because there's more pressure and the burn is faster. So that is why it's important to have a timing table that reflects that, not just one timing amount for all your high load areas. That's not correct. That is not how you do this. And there's a reason, otherwise the factory would do it. These guys spend, they have programs, MATLAB and Simulink, that write up these programs, and these guys work on these things for weeks to develop these calibrations. And if it worked, having just blocks of the same timing, they'd do that, because it would save time and money. So for now, and I'll change this later, I'm gonna copy this timing table. The high octane to the low octane for now. I do not leave it like that. I will pull timing out of the low octane in case he goes somewhere where there's 91, and maybe it'll start to tickle the knock sensors a little bit, and it'll start to revert down to this. But for now, I'm just gonna copy it to this, and my final revision, after I drive the car, I will pull a couple degrees, 3 degrees out of the higher load areas of this table, just in case he gets a bad tank of fuel or something, and there's some safety in there. All right, so I got my air fuel adjusted, I got my spark adjusted, save the file. I usually will write over the same file a couple times, and if I start going more than a couple times, I'll just keep writing new files. I'll save it as new, you know, tune 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Just there's less chances of corruption that way. So yeah, so we're gonna write this. I'll set the camera down for now, and then we'll get the car warmed back up and hit it again. All right, guys, tune loaded in, warming the car back up. Got that added timing. Hopefully got that air fuel curve real close. Again, just loading the car with the eddy brake here, just getting the coolant back up to temp. Want to get that coolant back up to 180. Again, I like doing these runs with the same exact coolant temperature every single time. I want consistency, especially when we're making small changes and we're going to see single-digit gains or losses on the power curve. The temperature can have an effect on that, so I want the same exact coolant temp every time. So we're just about there, showing 178. All right, there's 180. Take the brake off, slow this thing down with the big brake, and then we're gonna roll onto it here. Get it. Took that to the limiter. Got that set at 7,000. You can see I don't have my idle perfect yet, but again, that's drivability stuff. So, it liked that timing. Picked up 5 horsepower from adding a little bit of timing. And that's probably about where we're gonna end up. I'm gonna do one more pull with the camera on the stand. Big reason why we do these videos for the customer, and some of these guys like to see their cars on video running on the dyno. So the final pull I'll probably do up on the stand there, and then we'll take a look at that. But all right, so let's take a look at the logger. Sorry, let me zoom back out, my bad. It's gonna be hard to look at zoomed in. All right, so let's take a look, scroll back through here and take a look at the pull. All right, so I'm still lean here. It still needs more. But the top looks good. So you can see now our timing, there's 24 in the middle, right where I wanted, and just touching 20, yeah, 27 at the top. This is about where we're gonna end up. So again, this is just kind of a rich spike for me hitting the throttle, the transient fueling, and you can see that decays pretty quickly. And that looks good. That looks good for air fuel. That's a little too lean still. That looks good. The rest of that looks really good. Yeah. So I'm gonna call, other than this, I'm gonna call the rest of this good. Timing is, I know where we want it. I can maybe even add a little bit more down here. But so you guys can kind of see, you get the gist of what's going on here. And as I'm working my tuning up, and again, this car, I'd warmed it up. Just to kind of start the video, before I started the video, I had warmed it up, rolled it, you know, try to get the temperature of the rear end and the temperature of the transmission. Sorry, let me shut these fans off so we're not talking over these things. As I get outside the car, it gets kind of loud out here. This fan, all right. So, but you can see the time that, you know, that was from me walking you through, you know, obviously our air fuel curve was good, basically from maybe that second pull. But just adding timing, you can see how it liked that. But based on experience, I know from where we're at now, adding more timing isn't gonna do anything. So we added 2 degrees of timing, we picked up 5 horsepower, adding another degree is not gonna pick up us anything. Once you get into that like low, mid single deal, once you're picking up 5 wheel from a couple degrees of timing, that's it. You're in. You're all in. So this is looking really good. This is exactly where I wanted to be. Again, this is just cam. So the intake manifold is stock. The heads are stock, other than the springs. So there's no porting on any of that stuff. So this is just basically cam headers, cold air. And this is where we end up. And that stage 1 cam is nice and drivable. It gives us a nice torque curve all the way from, I'm starting the dyno pull down low on this, all the way out. And you can see it's peaking out, 63, 64, but it's carrying power pretty good all the way to 68, 69. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back over that log. I gotta reach in that one little spot up. I'm gonna do the next pull with the camera on the stand, just do an overview shot of the car rolling, and then we'll take a look at some final numbers and go from there, and that should be it. Okay, so I made a couple more changes. I got the air fuel curve nice and flat. Let me hit this fan also. But I was a little warmer on that run. Very minute, but you can see peaks the same. I did try to play with the timing a little bit in here, and it didn't do anything. If anything, it lost. I actually added some timing here, and it lost. So I'll go back. And again, like I said before, usually you'll hit MBT on these cam-only deals before you even get into the knock sensors. Did like a little extra timing down here, though, so I might try another pull with adding some down here. But I think peak-wise, as far as peak torque and peak power, this is about it. So 474, and that is usually where we end up with our stage 1 cam, with our small cam. So yeah, just because there's like this little dip here when I first hit the dyno at like 2500, I might add some more down there, but unfortunately my long-term fuel trim line kind of is clouding out my, but you can see now I got rid of that lean spike, so now we're 0.8. So after the transient dip, 0.88, 0.86, 0.87, 0.87, 0.88, 0.6. It gets a little rich there, but nothing crazy. 0.86, 0.87, 0.86, so then the rest of it's 0.87. So it's right on the money. That pull, I did put a little bit of timing in it, like right here, and it actually lost a little bit of power, so I'll probably take that back out. So before I was like at like 6,200. I was like 24 here, 25 here, now I'm 25 and then 26. So it didn't like that. It lost a smidge. I mean, we're talking 2 horsepower, so it's not. But if you add timing and it loses power, there's no need to have the extra timing, obviously, so we take it back out. Yeah, I might do a pull camera behind so you guys can kind of hear that. Some of my other videos, I'll do that with the camera set up behind. You can hear it rip through the gear. And then add some timing down here. So I'm going to set that camera back down and do that just to see if it does anything. It might add a little bit of torque down at the bottom end there at 2500 where you're kind of playing around the street. So I'll do that and we'll hit it again. So I actually did add a little bit of fuel up here just to try it, and it liked it a little bit. So you can see just the very tippy top. I added 1% from about down in here, and it picked up a couple tenths. So whatever. I mean, it is what it is. So I think we're gonna call it at that. That's looking good.
So what we'll do, and this is what I always do because this is the important part. So we're gonna open up that last pull, and then we're gonna open up the final pull on bolt-ons, which I believe is this run. Yeah.
So that was the bolt-on. So Of course you'll notice, and I'll start out with the lows, of course you'll notice that we did lose a little bit down in the bottom. So below 3,200 RPM, we do lose a little bit, and that's just the nature of any camshaft, unless you have a really small camshaft. But any camshaft that's gonna do this, then at the top, subsequently, is gonna lose a little bit at the bottom. You're always trading something off unless you're bumping compression or doing something else to offset the camshaft inefficiencies down at the bottom end. But what we're really focused on here is, you know, what happens after, you know, 5,000 RPM, 4,800, where we really start to see the gain of having more duration and more lift. This car was a pretty strong runner with the bolt-on package, so we kind of expected this. But yeah, I mean, this is still a nice broad power band. We're not really giving up a whole lot as far as drivability, but you know, once you roll onto it, especially a stick car like this, you roll onto it in second gear, and once the needle swings past 3,000, and then when it really swings past 5,000, it's really where you're going to feel that surge. But you know, in between there, it's going to be like it was before until you get it up, and then you're really going to feel the power. Especially these 1LEs with the 391 gearing, it's really easy to get it up in the R's. You don't have a problem doing that. So to take advantage of the camshaft. So. And this car, when it was stock, which I always like to look at, if I go back to a baseline of that, the green is then stock. So you can see we're about where you'd be stock on the bottom end now, and then obviously, you know, from there, everything above that is, you know, the mods we do. The headers obviously gain quite a bit, and then the cam is gaining up at the top end. So yeah, that'll kind of wrap this video up. If you guys skip to the end, stock, bolt-on, so Roto-Fab and headers, and Roto-Fab headers, stage 1 cam. And that's where we're at with this one. So I know he's been enjoying this car quite a bit, and he's going to enjoy it even more now with that added power. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll keep making videos, keep getting stuff back in the dyno.